More than 40 years ago, a series of circumstances changed the course of my life. At the age of 10, a church leader sexually molested me and continued to do so for several years. When my parents discovered the abuse, they did not rescue me, but instead they continued the abuse themselves, and I eventually gave birth to my father's child. After some years, I began to tell others about my childhood experiences, and I felt that the secret was finally out. But until now, I never shared the details of my ordeal, nor did I share how I felt during that time. I assumed that nobody would care about these trivial memories, so I kept them in a very private place within me. It wasn't until I sought the help of a mental health professional that I was able to look again at these early days and find a way to put them behind me. It's a natural thing for me to express myself in pictures, so with the encouragement of my therapist, I found an old sketch pad and began to draw. When I was finished, I was astonished to realize that this exercise had somehow placed the difficult experiences of my childhood firmly in the past. They now held no more power than any other past event. I was in no way completely healed by this experience, but it did have a profound effect on my outlook, and it has enabled me to move forward with my life. That is why I'm sharing my story with you. This is a story about secrets and about the people who try to make you keep them. I kept my secrets for a very long time, until a special doctor helped me to tell about them. I told my story with pictures and words, and now I'm sharing them with you. When I was little, I was Daddy's little girl. I loved my daddy. I loved his big, rough hands and the way he smelled. And I loved the safe feeling I had when I was in his lap. Daddy could fix anything. He built things for us kids. He let me help him because I was his favorite. Daddy told us kids about personal things that happened when he was young. Sometimes he told me bad things about Mom and other grown-ups that I didn't think kids should hear. When I was 10 years old, we got a new pastor at our church. He wasn't kind and wise like our old pastor, but he was smart and had a Scottish accent. We girls thought he was cute, even though he was kind of old. I was so proud when the new pastor chose me to babysit while his wife worked at night. He started touching me in the car on the way to his house that first night. I told him no, but he didn't stop. I was alone with him in the car on the dark highway. When we got to his wife, I wanted to tell his wife, but I was too scared. That first night, he took me to a bedroom and told me what to do. I kept crying and asking him to stop, but he just kept talking and doing things. It hurt. I looked at the wallpaper and cried. The pastor came into my bedroom every night that his wife was gone. I pretended to be asleep, but that didn't stop him. He came in and did the sexual things anyway. The pastor's little boy woke up every day around 5 a.m. and shook his crib until I got up. The pastor never came to see about the child. I was very tired all of the time because of the late night visits by the pastor and the early waking of the little boy. The little girl was quiet, but the little boy had a lot of energy. I tried so hard to keep up with everything, the house, the kids, the meals, but I just couldn't. I tried so hard. When the new baby came, it was my job to take care of her. I was 12 years old. I didn't know how to take care of a tiny baby. I did everything I was told to do and hoped it was all right. I couldn't understand why parents would leave such a tiny baby with a kid as young as me. I was so relieved when my parents discovered my secret. I cried and told them what the pastor had been doing. We went to the pastor's house, but I never got to speak to anyone. My parents thought it must be my fault. They forgave the pastor, and he continued to preach at the church. Dad said that now I would need and want sex. He said that he would give me sex so that I wouldn't be tempted to have sex with other people. He asked if that would be okay. I wanted to scream, "No, no, no!" But I said, "Okay." I was 13 years old. I never wanted sex, but every couple of weeks Dad would say, "It must be about time," and we would go into Mom and Dad's bedroom. Mom would stand guard, and if any of the other kids came around, she would tell them that Dad and I were talking. At school, I had friends and did normal things, but I had to be on guard and be careful with what I said so that all the sexual secrets wouldn't come out. I got used to sharing only part of myself at school and at home. I always felt like an outsider, like there was something wrong with me. I don't know how Mom and Dad came to the conclusion that I was pregnant. Mom took me to doctors and gave me medicine to start my period, but nothing worked. I was glad she didn't try anything physical. I had heard terrible stories about people trying to abort babies using knitting needles. The doctor confirmed that I was pregnant. I told the lies about how I got pregnant that Mom and Dad told me to tell. After the doctor went away, Dad spoke to me as if he believed the lies he had just made up. He acted like he thought that someone else was the father of the baby. We moved from the country to a big new house in the city. There were sirens and car noises which were new, exciting, and a little scary. When I lay on the floor, the furniture had not yet arrived. I could feel the little knot of hardness in my belly. My little breasts were tender against the hard floor. This was the first that I felt the inescapable pregnancy within me. For a while, I stayed with a family in Minneapolis. Mom came to see me sometimes. She had to ride 2 buses after she had worked all day, and then ride 2 buses to get back home. She always brought candy bars, and she was very kind. I felt grateful that she made the effort to visit. Once at the house in Minneapolis, I was trying to get out of the tub, but it was awkward because my belly was big. As I rose up, my tummy got into a funny shape, and I wanted to laugh. I wanted to show somebody. I wanted to know if others had had the same experience, but there was nobody to tell or show. Dad visited me once while I was in Minneapolis. He asked me what I wanted to eat, and he bought me fried chicken. Then he said I needed sex, and he had sex with me in the car. At the end of my pregnancy, I went to Booth Memorial Home and Hospital. I had only 2 sets of clothes, and I was afraid to ask Mom and Dad for more, so I washed them in the sink with bar soap. Mom and Dad never visited. I didn't tell any of the girls how I got pregnant. If they asked, I pretended that I had a boyfriend like them. In the labor room, I was alone. My bladder pushed through my abdominal wall without my awareness. I had to push on the bulge to expel the urine. I didn't tell anyone. In the delivery room, a nurse held my hand and called me little one. Mom came to see me after the baby was born. She took me to the nursery window to see him. He was tiny and perfect. I looked to see if he looked like Dad. I was never allowed to touch or hold the baby. That was the only time I ever saw him. We celebrated Christmas at our cousin's house 4 days after I had given birth. I hated telling the lie that Mom and Dad had made up. When I saw something tiny and perfect, I thought and wanted to say, "That's just like my baby." But of course, I said nothing. I started at the new big city school after the Christmas break. I had to put tissue in my bra because I still had milk. I had to tell the lie story, but the teachers knew that I had transferred from Booth, so I felt foolish and ashamed. Lots of kids were curious about me, but I stuck close to my church friends. When I started dating, I would stop my boyfriends before they went too far. I couldn't think of a way to explain why I wasn't a virgin or how I knew so much about sex. The sessions with Dad didn't stop until I told part of my story to a college boy who would later become my husband. I cried and shouted at my parents. Mom said, "Don't talk to your father that way." Dad said nothing. After that, I didn't speak with Mom and Dad for several years. I'm now old enough to be a grandmother. I was never able to tell anyone these things before, and now I'm very glad that I did. I used to think that I needed to lie and keep secrets in order to be safe. Lots of times I felt bad about myself. Now I feel much better. I really wish I could have told this story a long time ago.